Good morning and welcome into your Monday episode of Hoops Talk with Dave. Monday, March the 10th. 10 days away from the start of the round of 64, 8 days away from the start of round of 68, and 6 days away from Selection Sunday. We already have several tickets punched into the big dance. We'll get to those in a minute. But first, we'll talk about some massive games to close out the regular season that took place on Saturday. Starting in the SEC with the Iron Bowl of basketball. These two teams, it's really tough to watch them play and say they're not the two best teams, if not two of the best teams in all of the country. Alabama takes down number one Auburn, hence Auburn their second straight loss in overtime. 93-91, a Mark Sears left-handed runner at the buzzer gave the Crimson Tide the victory. Once again, they win that one 93-91. Staying in the SEC, another ranked matchup between Kentucky and Missouri. Kentucky on the road in Columbia, Missouri. They win that one 91-83. Mizzou unable to keep up with the scoring there. The Wildcats reign victorious over the Tigers. Arkansas playing host to Mississippi State. What a game this was. Very back and forth, very high scoring. The Razorbacks win it 93-92, a frantic finish to this one. Arkansas led by 15 points with just over 9.5 minutes to go. Mississippi State brought it all the way back and then lost in the final second. Other ranked teams taking care of business. Texas A&M on the road at LSU. They win 66-52. South Carolina on the road at Tennessee. The Volunteers beat them 75-65. South Carolina and LSU hold the bottom two spots in the SEC. South Carolina will be starting the SEC tournament against number 9 or the 9th seed, Arkansas. LSU will be starting it off against the number 10 seed, Mississippi State. The SEC tournament begins Wednesday, so those matchups will take place then. Duke on the road at UNC. Duke versus UNC. This was a fun one to watch for the majority of the first half and part of the second half before Duke just overpowered North Carolina. Ended up taking care of this one, winning it 82-69. Great showing from Duke there as they continue to look like arguably the best team in the country. I think after you've seen back-to-back losses from Auburn, Duke is easily going to be the number one team in the country, AP poll-wise at least. Now, when it comes down to the number one overall seed, it's closer now, but I think the nod still goes to Auburn. I'm reading up on some bracketologists on Twitter, a lot of great stuff they put out for us, and they seem to be leaning towards Auburn. But if Auburn loses early here in the SEC tournament, if they drop their first game, maybe even their second game, if they do anything besides win the tournament, it's tough to see them get that number one overall seed, especially if Duke just rolls through the ACC like they've been doing all year long. Speaking of rolling through a conference, Houston, they take down Baylor 65-61. The Cougars clinched the number one spot in the Big 12 last week. They stayed at that number one seed now heading into the Big 12 tournament this week. They won that tournament last year, of course, and they went into Waco in this one and won it 65-61. Over in the Big East, a ranked matchup, St. John's on the road at Marquette, number 6 versus number 20. The Red Storm, another win for them in the Big East. They look great. This is about to be an AP top 5 team. They take down the Golden Eagles of Marquette 86-84. Some Big 12 teams on the road taking care of business. Texas Tech winning 85-57 over the Arizona State Sun Devils. And Iowa State on the road against Kansas State. They win 73-57. Great showing from those two teams in the top 10. I think the Big 12 this year has been overhated, I think. All the talk is about how good the SEC is, as it should be, but everyone's talking about how close the Big Ten is to the SEC, and I've even heard some rumblings about how the Big East is the third best basketball conference, but I disagree with that. I think the Big 12 is almost as good as the Big Ten when it comes down to it. Some of these Big 12 teams, of course, they got 3 in the AP top 10 right now, and I know AP doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but still, it's a great showing to kind of look at to just see how well teams are playing. And the Big 12 has a lot of them, including BYU as they play host to Utah. The Cougars, number 23 ranked Cougars, winning 85-74 in a Big 12 showdown out west. I say out west. It was late night, but it was in Kansas against a team from out west. Kansas, the Jayhawks win 83-76 over number 24 ranked Arizona. And talk about an upset here. Penn State over Wisconsin. Penn State missing the Big Ten tournament completely. That doesn't stop them from crashing Wisconsin's senior day party. They win 86-75, and that's a costly loss for Wisconsin. They drop from potentially being one of those last two seeds to now being all the way down at potentially a 4 seed. And that is a massive difference. When you look at the mid-majors who have already punched tickets and those who may punch tickets from other conferences, you look at them and you go, wow, they are really good this year. This is a really, really, really good group of mid-majors. And the 15 seeds are way, way, way worse than the 13 seeds. These 13 seeds, it wouldn't shock me to see one Wouldn't shock me to see 2 13 seeds pick off a 4 seed this year just because of how strong they are, how well they play basketball. And speaking of those mid-majors, let's talk about the ones that have their tickets punched already. Lipscomb, they played host to North Alabama in the Atlantic Sun Championship. And Lipscomb, the Bison, they take down the Lions of UNA 76-65. A very fun contest yesterday that took place. The Bison got hot in the last 2 minutes, pulled away with this one. They clinched their spot in March Madness. Over to the Missouri Valley Conference, talk about Arch Madness. Drake playing host to Bradley. I personally hope Bradley would beat Drake just to have a 2-bid Missouri Valley Conference because the bubble this year is so incredibly weak. I would much rather see these smaller conferences get 2 bids in than have the 12th SEC team make it, just because that's what March is all about. It's all about these underdogs. It's all about these teams like this getting an opportunity on the big stage and proving it. Bradley, unfortunately, unable to do that in this game against Drake. Drake, they win 63-48. They clinched an auto bid. They were going to get in regardless once they made this game. But they are able to clinch that automatic bid. They're going to be sitting right about that 9, maybe that 10 seed line. Great to see from the Drake Bulldogs. Over in the Big South, High Point talking about a fun offense for you. They take down Winthrop 81-69, and Winthrop started filling up the stat sheet in the first half. They were popping off. Won the first half 39-29. High Point came back with a 52-point second half. They were lighting it up in the second half. Their depth is incredible. Shout out to the Huss Bus, as they call it in High Point, the Huss Bus, for choosing to ride with the bench in the second half. The bench is what brought them back in this game. Great to see from High Point. Great to see for the Big South. I wouldn't want to face them if I'm a 4 seed. I'll tell you one thing. In the Ohio Valley, this was a battle for a 16 seed between SIU, Edwardsville, and Southeast Missouri. SIUE taking down SEMO. In what was ugly at first, SEMO able to make it a game at the start of the second half, but then SIU Edwardsville able to pull away in the second half, winning this game handily. And our final bid that has been punched over in the Summit League, Omaha playing host to St. Thomas. Now in this league, in this championship game, I should say, St. Thomas is ineligible to make the NCAA tournament because of their transition rule from a lower division. With that being said, Omaha already clinched the bid of the NCAA tournament before they even played in this game. That didn't stop them from rolling on, taking the Summit League championship title, and they're going to be a really fun, they might be a 15 seed, but they can score the basketball. That's kind of something I always look for, at least when it comes down to these mid-majors who can make a run in March, is teams that can just light up the scoreboard. And Omaha, they can absolutely do that. Let's take a quick peek at some games tonight. Not a whole lot of basketball on it, but the basketball that is being played tonight is very, very important. Starting in the Sun Belt, this to clinch a bid to the March Madness tournament. Arkansas State taking on Troy. The Red Wolves, 1.5-point favorites. Tip-off for that one, 7 p.m. Eastern. And over in the SoCon, going from the Sun Belt to the Southern Conference, Wofford taking on Furman. Furman sits as a 2.5-point favorite. Tip-off for that one is also at 7 p.m. Eastern. One of those on ESPN, the other one on ESPN2. You're not going to want to miss this one. You may want to bring out 2 TVs for it because you've got 2 bids on the line right here. And those are, I say unfortunately, because there's just so many more to come for the rest of this week, but unfortunately, those are the only 2 bids we had to be punched tonight. Got a lot of great basketball here, including the West Coast Conference. Talk about Pepperdine. What a great story. The West Coast Conference bracket, of course, is set up in a gauntlet fashion to where if you're one of those teams such as 9-seed Pepperdine, you have to win 6 games to be able to win the WCC tournament, whereas your St. Mary's, who's the number 1 seed, and that's who Pepperdine's taking on tonight, you only have to win 2 games, the semifinals and the finals. You get an automatic spot in the semifinals. Pepperdine has won 4 straight games. Now they're playing their 5th tonight. They're 20.5-point underdogs against St. Mary's. Crazier things have happened in March. This would be insane. I think St. Mary's takes care of business, but still, nonetheless, a great run for Pepperdine. Nothing to hang their heads on. Tip-off for that one is 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. And then your late-night West Coast Conference action, another semifinal here in the WCC. San Francisco taking on Gonzaga. The Zags, 14.5-point favorites over the Dons. Tip-off for that one, estimated to be 11:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. A good rule of thumb will be 30 minutes after the first game concludes. So 30 minutes after St. Mary's takes care of business, you can expect to see Gonzaga take on San Francisco. And that will do it for today's episode of Hoops Talk with Dave. I'm your host, Dave Smith. Thanks for joining us here. Once again, hey, the bracket comes out on Sunday. Sunday is when we get our March Madness bracket. I could not be more excited. Excited to bring you content every day leading up to then, and then every day after that covering the tournament. More NBA action coming once the NCAA tournament is over. But for the time being, happy March, everybody. I'm your host, Dave Smith. Thanks for joining me here on Hoops Talk with Dave.